What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Spare Parts Show. I am your host, Brian Wagner. This week, we have Mr. Dave Kindig on the show. Dave, what is going on?
Man, I'm just hanging out. We got some beautiful weather here in Salt Lake, and it's time to shake down the cars.
You know what? That's exactly, I've been like trying to knock out the punch out lists on my project cars to get them ready. And I was actually out in the shop last night, sorting some issues out, swapping the coolant out for water because of these lovely Ohio winters. And we're about to put some fire in some pipes and some cars and go spend some money, make some noise.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, we've been pretty busy with the shop. The beginning of this year we had the big show for us. Going to Detroit, and so everything seems to have gone on hold. And it's pretty much like that every single year. We end up finishing our season of filming, around January, February. But I got to sit on all these cars because I got to put at least 150 to 200 miles on each car before I deliver them to a customer. If it's going to break down, I want it to break down on me. So I have a whole warehouse full of cars because of the Riddler and everything else. Now we finally got good weather. There's no salt on the road here in Salt Lake, so we're out driving the cars lap after lap, just shaking them down, getting them ready.
You mean you just don't put these things in the oven, bake at 350 for a half hour, and they come out perfect?
No, so everybody's like, well, gosh, it took you guys an awful long time to build that car. It's like, yeah, normally it only takes me 44 minutes if you're not counting the commercials. But
Yeah. It's funny, those who build project cars completely understand that you are one broken bolt away from a 4-hour job, just
yep.
instantly. And then when you are doing stuff that's totally custom, just you can have the greatest plan on earth, and then you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is going to be finished out great. Oh, wait. And then it
You got to
opens
go
up right.
backwards to make sure you put enough room in for the one thing you forgot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, we've been 25 years now. It's we've made a master list of a checklist, to make sure that we've got everything in place, and so it's rare that we miss something big, but I mean, it still happens, I'm sure.
And you kind of touched on something I wanted to talk about, with Detroit, the 12 Air, the Riddler. That's where we, kind of met and I got to see that car. And I will tell the audience what I saw, because I was one of the first people in there snapping pictures, getting ready. And I'm just like working one side to the other, shooting all the Riddler cars. Well, then I get to this car that I see, and it immediately strikes me as I'm like, that is wait, what? Like you start looking at it, it's like, it's kind of a Corvette, but not really a Corvette.
Right.
The best way folks describe 12 Air when you see it in person is the closer you get, the more stuff you start to like unlock and see, and that's sweet. And you know, then I find out after the fact the whole car's completely hand built. I mean, like, brother, that's a lot to it. So, in one word, how would you describe the 12 Air build?
Bitching.
I'd
I
buy that
mean,
for $1.
you give me one word, that's the only one that can, that I think that can explain that car. Basically, in far more words than just one. The car was basically the opportunity to build something in 25 years that I never had the opportunity to do. Plus, my background in motorsports, whether it's IndyCar, drag racing, NASCAR, street rodding, 8.5 years of high performance coatings is really where I got my knowledge of the industry. And of course, I always had the love for cars. So to know about the Riddler in Detroit and finally get the opportunity to do that car, I wanted to make sure I checked every single box, because if I'm going to compete, I wanted to not just go and get a grade 8. I wanted to really have a chance at winning the Riddler.
And I mean, the thing about the Riddler to me, going to that show, whether, even before I started doing the street muscle deal, like even as a drag racing fan, and, I'd still go to that show just because it's like, it's cool car stuff. I
Right.
honestly, like, I feel bad every year at the Riddler because there are like someone has to lose. And honestly, I hate to use a fair, it's not fair, but it's like you never know when like a monster like 12 Air is going to show up, and you can have your best life's work ever out there.
Yeah.
But it's like you're going up against something that's so amazing. And who knows, there might have been something even more amazing than 12 Air that you'd have been like, well, you lost to what you lost to.
Yep. Yep.
It's people don't understand how tough that award is to win because you have no idea
Right.
what you're drawing against.
Well, what's so funny is, the Riddler being around for 53 years. The Riddler competition started in 71. The Autorama started in 1953. which is actually funny. I'll tell you the numbers game in a minute here, but basically there was talk about updating it because one picture or leak out, you're disqualified. Is at least that's what we always thought. And the Sloniker in California at the Grand National Roadster Show is basically to be the West Coast Riddler competition, right? But they allowed you to show pictures of the car as long as it's not completed and it's never been shown at another show. So they kind of gave more of an update. So there was talk about, well, Riddler should do the same thing. And I actually was thinking, yeah, you know what? It sucks that you could get disqualified by somebody leaking a picture. Well, they clarified that that's not the case. If you're promoting it as the builder, then yes, you're going to be disqualified. If somebody accidentally takes a picture and posts it or purposely does it, you weren't doing it, you're not disqualified. So that was kind of nice for Butch to clarify that. But there was also talk in the Riddler meeting, in the grade 8 meeting rather, of whether we should update the rules to where you could do a little bit of marketing. And one of the gentlemen that was competing and had a grade 8 had said that, it'd be nice if he could use that amount of work that he's done on his car to promote his business. Well, the problem is if you were, let's just imagine we're all sitting at a table playing poker, right? If everybody's waiting to have a full 5 aces because they know the other guy's got 3 aces, this guy's got 4 kings, everybody's starting to negotiate whether they're going to go or not because there's going to be too much competition or too good of a build because everybody's been able to see the builds. You will never have anybody show up to Detroit to go to the Riddler competition. And so for that, when I started thinking of it that way, I actually piped up and said, it's kind of like showing everybody's got their hands out. If everybody knows that they don't have any competition, then they're going to go. As soon as the one person pulls in with a bigger, better build, they're going to chicken out and wait until the next year. And then nobody will ever actually debut a car and go because they don't want to lose. So with it being basically blind hand, I think it's the better way to go about it because now you're not holding off until the next year or the year after.
And it forces people to put their best stuff out there. Like
exactly,
you got to show up and you have to absolutely bring it because you never know what else is going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be, I think is always going to be the best way for the Riddler to be competitive is that you should just put your best stuff together. And if somebody built a better car or a bigger build or took more time or had better ideas or better execution, then that's why there's competition. Somebody's got to be in first place and somebody's going to be in second, third, and fourth, and so on. So
when you look at 12 Air, anytime you just you look at it, you walk past the shop, what's the one thing you just look at that car that just makes your soul smile that you're like, man, that is the baddest thing I've ever done on a vehicle?
The silhouette. I mean, by far the silhouette of that car is so beautiful. And honestly, the car sits, when it's sitting on the ground stagnant, is 41.5 inches tall. It is extremely low. It's just a beautiful car. When I build a car, whether it's this, the 12 Air or anything, I like it to be at a car show and somebody walks around the car and they're impressed and they see things and they see the details. And then they leave and they come back, or maybe it's another show, they see the car again, and they notice a whole bunch of other stuff that they didn't notice the first time. That car entirely, literally, the only thing in that car, it looks like it came out of the box and went into that car, is the Haltech CAN bus computer under the passenger side of the dash. Literally every piece of hardware on that car is custom built. It's all triple square, stainless, polished with EDM laser etch on the inside of it.
And to me, that's like, if you put a different set of wheels on that car, it could legit almost look like, like a race car, like in the one in the picture behind you. Like it has just such a classic, like aggressive, like timeless look to it that it is very, very unique. It's just, it's so hard to, because it always cracks me up when people flip out and they see like a new car, like a new Mustang or the new Camaro pictures. So like, oh, that's going to be terrible. I'm like, wait till you see it in person. Like pictures do weird things to cars. This is one of those cars that, again, like when you see it in person, it's a completely different experience.
And from any angle, any side of the vehicle, front, back, side, 3/4, it's a treat to look at because it has flow at every single angle. I mean, it just, I might sound like I'm boasting a bit, but I'm just so proud of the guys and what we've been able to accomplish and getting the opportunity from Dave Maxwell and Tracy to build the car and just go nuts on what I would build for myself. I mean, they really just gave us free reign to just go ham, and that's what we did.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second because you built that for customers. Like, what's that, let's pull the curtain back a little bit. Like, what's that process like? Because again, like, not everybody can swing for the fences on a build. What's it like when someone comes in and says, I want to build a Riddler car? Like, what's that like?
Well, I had to pinch myself. It was actually my 20th anniversary year that I met Dave Maxwell at the Pittsburgh Autorama, and he was introduced to me by some friends, and they basically was like, Dave, I want you to build me a car to compete for Detroit Autorama and get a grade 8 and hopefully a Riddler. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want to build? And he goes, I have no idea. He says, what do you got in mind? I was like, well, let me, I've got a bunch of stuff in mind. I don't sleep much. And so we were actually going to meet up a couple weeks later at Chicago Autorama. I was doing a meet and greet there. And I said, let me meet you there. I'll put some ideas together on paper and I'll bring it. So we had a nice meeting and sat down. And I showed him basically a bubble top fastback version of a 1953 Corvette. And he's like, well, gosh, Dave, this is really pretty. He says, but do you think a fiberglass car could win the Riddler? I said, well, I wouldn't know. I'm not going to build it out of fiberglass. I'm going to build it out of aluminum. And he goes, well, that's kind of crazy. Okay. And so he started getting into the mode. He goes, what are you going to power it with? I said, well, the original cars all had straight sixes. We know there's enough room for 6 cylinders. I said, how about we do a V12? Okay. So I get back and we're brainstorming. Of course, the way that my shop and I work together, Will and Kev and all the guys throughout the shop, is I'll put ideas together on paper and I'll have all of these themes and ideas. But I'm always open for suggestions and for people to add ideas, and it's okay. I tell them no sometimes very nicely, and a lot of times I just go, hey, that's kind of cool. I didn't think of that. And so when we started talking about what the chassis would look like, doing a little bit of research and kind of just brainstorming together, Will's like, why don't we not do a chassis? Why don't we do it unibody? And I was like, that could be pretty cool because when you belly pan something, they want you to pull the belly pans off and they want to look inside, underneath. And I'm like, I really don't want to do belly pans because then you have all of the hardware. You're going to have to look at all that stuff. I really don't want to see any of that stuff. So I said, I'm completely open to that. So as we progressed, we was doing a lot of SolidWorks design. We'll, develop the idea of a belly pan, the mid structure, which is 3/8 aluminum plate. And that's basically our monocoque, the structure of the body. And the outside body shell is put together and then welded it all together. And it worked out killer.
That's just like, when you work on cars, like I've worked on race cars, my own stuff, crewed on race teams, like for me, it's like the car nerd, science nerd, mechanical nerd behind it. Like that kind of stuff is just like,
there's
wow.
a poster boy. It's Will. It's exactly what he is, a car super nerd. I love it.
It's, I've come from a drag racing background, and for me, nitro racing is like it's killing ants with a thermonuclear device. It's the science that goes into that, or become a dirt late model and like open wheel fan, and like, oh, they just go fast and turn left. I'm like, if it was that easy, anybody could do it. Like the science, the science that us car guys put into stuff is unbelievable. It really, really is. When we want to do something, come hell or high water, we're going to find a way.
Right. Well, and that's what I always say, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. Or as I say, where there's a cutoff wheel and a welder, there's a way.
There you go.
Now, we're going to do something interesting on this show that I've never done before, is that you have a ridiculously active fan Facebook group that I found when I was researching stuff for the article that I wrote about the Autorama. And I knew I was going to do the show with you. And I jumped in there. I said, hey, if you were going to ask Dave a question, what would you ask him? Because unfortunately at the show, we don't do it live due to timing. And, if I had an assistant, I could have them maybe looking at comments to ask you questions. But right. Unfortunately, that's not in the budget. So it's just me and my own bad ideas. So I went there, asked your fans some questions. So they're going to hopefully watch this in the Facebook group when I post it. And the first one we got is from Glenn Tate. And if I mispronounce any names, I'm sorry in advance. I'm just really good at that. It's a secret talent. Glenn Tate asks, why don't you design a really good engine hoist that electronically adjusts the balance to allow the tech to tilt the engine and tranny assembly? I'm thinking that's maybe something to do with something you've seen on the show.
To install?
Yeah,
I'm assuming to install?
Yeah.
They already make it. We have it. It's a simple little, it's got a thread going forward, backward. It mounts to the top of the engine, just where you'd normally pick up a block. Transmission's in there, and you can tilt it back and forth so you can slip it down into the car. To further that, Glenn, I believe it is. Most of the time when we're putting a car together, if it's a full chassis car, we're putting the engine and transmission in the chassis before we even put the body on.
Interesting.
It's a lot easier, kind of like they do at the factory. And yeah, I mean, if you have to pull it out, it is cumbersome because a lot of times you got to take front clip, core support, radiator, accessory drive sometimes. And of course, all the electronics, headers, everything off of it. So hopefully you don't have to take the motor in and out when the car's all together. But typically, yeah, we'll drop them in the chassis and then set the body down around it.
And I think that also brings up an interesting point that a lot of people might know is that I'm working with a friend on his drag and drive car, and it's like mostly assembled. We're doing some final fitment, but what they don't realize is you do all the rough fabrication, and then you blow the whole darn thing up to do finish, powder coating, painting, and other stuff. So
Yep.
you'll see something that looks like, oh, well, that car's almost done. Like, oh no, it's not even close, my friend.
It's pre-fit. Yep. Pre-assemblies. Yep.
Because there's a lot of times like you're not, no matter, I've learned that no matter how careful you are, even if you have a fancy dancy engine hoist that moves it all around, you're still going to nick paint. Like
right.
So just if you have a way to put it in there from the whip, do it.
Yep.
I might actually hit you up on that tilting deal. I didn't know that was a thing. That would make my life that would make my life infinitely easier swinging an engine in and out by myself.
Right.
Now, Dave Cook has a really good question. All your builds are amazing, but do you have any that you would do differently if you're doing it again? Is there, like, to kind of clarify that, is there like maybe one in your mind that you're like, man, I would love to have another crack at that?
I never look backwards because I have a very active imagination. So I always come up with new ideas. I don't know if I was ever to go back and redo or switch up one of my old builds. Maybe first one that maybe it comes to mind is the Boss Mustang, the white Boss. It was one of the first cars that really put us on the map. And the 24x15s with intros wheels on them, the 403 wheels. It was super cool. If I was to do it over again, I probably wouldn't do that big muscle machine styled wheel. I'd probably bring it down to maybe a 22-inch, 22x12, which 335 is the widest tire they put on that application. Go to a 21, I could do a 355, 25, 21 Pirelli. But I don't know, changing up the style of that car would be kind of cool. Street rods, I've always been a big street rod fan, and it sucks that all those old boys are starting to kick it, and there's nobody really jumping on those cars. Driving a 32 Ford Roadster, fendered or not fendered, is a lot of fun. They're great cars. I'm really hoping to get an opportunity down the road to maybe try and work on creating a new style of builds where people that are normally more into muscle cars, fat fendered 50s cars, sport compacts is always going to be a thing for certain generations. I'd love to find a way to build a street rod and do updates to street rods that are fun to bring them back out and cruise them.
There were two cars I was up at Cleveland last weekend for the Piston Power Show, and there were two hot rods that I was like, I just saw them. I'm like, these guys are in my mind. They're in my mind. One of them was an old, like, high boy looking roadster, slammed to the ground, twin turbo LS setup on it. I'm like, oh, that thing is just ignorantly awesome. EFI. Well, then across from it was another one, like rat rod with the big wire wheels on it, that kind of that trend. Yep. It was very rusty. It had a twin turbo setup on it, but it was with a blow through carburetor. Like, oh, that's like the perfect mix of like old and new tech. And it kind of harkens back to LS Fest the past couple of years. There's always been at least one guy that has shown up with a LS supercharged T-bucket. Like, that is just, it's
that's
so
as close as you can get to a Jado pack duct tape to a diaper.
Yeah. Like, it's it's like, tequila and fireworks are bad for men for a reason, because we don't know any better. It's the same thing with that car. It's like you're pushing almost a horsepower per pound.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that I'm sure if you got your hands on, you could do. You could build it, but you almost would feel bad giving it to a customer. Like, are they going to hurt themselves with this thing?
Well, I used to tell everybody to drive careful, and I figured it was hurting my business. And now I just say, hey, we'll see you later. And it's been working great.
If you're going to do anything stupid, don't get caught, right?
If you're going to do anything stupid, you know where to find me after you're done doing it stupid.
And I think that idea of doing some update on some of these hot rods would be cool because how many, you go to some of these shows and I've always had this kind of like theory at car shows. You can tell what era a car was
Yeah.
built in based on the paint and wheels,
Mhm.
and take some of these cars that, they kind of have that 80s, like that definitely that 80s look
That's
to them.
the
Like,
tweed interior, the 14 and 15-inch Boyds,
yeah,
the ball mill billet everything.
the paint colors that just look like they rolled straight out of Miami Vice. It's,
Yep. Yep.
that's why I'm a fan of. I like builds, honestly. If when I try to do stuff, I try to make it look timeless. You know what I mean? I put wheels on something. I want those wheels to look good 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Paint and whatnot. Because it. Don't you agree that it can be really easy to have a dated vehicle with how trends change?
Yeah, and so for me, as a designer, I literally don't look at what everybody else is doing. I appreciate other people's art, but I don't try and follow trends. I try and set the trends. I try and come up with things that are unique, that are fit to the era that we're working with as far as the vehicle. But just like what you say, I want to make the car still look like it's in style, 30 years from now. Most of my muscle cars, I play off of a wheel that might have been that style, more, obviously bigger diameter, a little bit wider, much better fit, better stance. But I want to make it look like it would have looked, back in the 60s or 70s when it might have been first customized.
I love, love, love guys that take old wheels and make them new. Or there was actually another car up at a Lincoln up at the Autograma this weekend that had it look like it was old school Lincoln hub. Like, oh, it looks from a glance like, oh, that's an OEM wheel. I look a little bit closer. I'm like, well, no, that's a lot bigger,
Yeah.
and that's solid billet. I'm like, oh yeah, that, like, again, that just it's the stuff like that that just looks awesome.
Right, right. Yeah, it's those little tricks, like I say, the idea behind street rodding and muscle cars and any kind of customizing is to show your individuality and your style, and that's why we do it, to pick up on chicks and to have fun.
Yeah,
So,
it's like the phrase that I have. I like anything loud, fast, and dangerous.
yep,
It I've been very blessed to go to a lot of different drag racing events, and one of my favorite events is to go to is the World Cup Finals, import versus domestic. When I've been able to go up at Maryland, because you get to see some of the baddest import cars in the world, and until you've heard, a nasty rotary on the chip sounding like it's trying to rotate the earth, you ain't
uh-huh,
lived. And then
right.
then my little mind starts working. I'm like, well, what can I put a rotary in that it hasn't been in? You know what I mean?
Right.
We have editorial meetings where you try to come up with crazy ideas, Dave, and this was one of mine. They're like, what's a project car that we could do that's completely off the wall? I'm like, easy. Let's find a C4 Corvette. We'll put a rotary in it, sequential transmission, and we'll call it Project Miami Vice, and wide body it and just make it like absolutely ignorant.
You try and find one of those body kits that has the Testarossa styled strakes. Yeah. Oh yeah, you got to have it. The square tail lights on the Corvette, absolutely.
I'm like,
ZR1.
Earth, like, if we want to make just everybody mad, let's put a rotary in like a first or a second gen Camaro. Like, people will, like, they'll burn us at the stake, but it'll get a lot of views.
Yeah. Well, it's like me doing electric on my CF1. It's like, why would you do that? It's like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah,
If you've never experienced 3,650 foot-pounds of torque, you just ain't living, bro. And yeah, there's visceral things missing at the moment, but we're working on that. I'm working with Borla actually. Is they've developed, because they're obviously in the muffler business, and that is the sound of your vehicle, right? Well, for all the electric vehicles, a couple of years ago, they got product of the year, creating an outside sound system that would actually make the car sound like a vehicle, like a V8, like we're all used to. So I'm actually incorporating that into my CF1, so that I can actually hear the car, because that was literally the only thing that was missing when I was running it on the track.
EVs are polarizing, and I get it, but I rode a Tesla Plaid, and we did rips around the block in like the three different modes. And granted, I've ridden in some like ridiculously overpowered all-wheel drive cars,
Yep.
but that thing on kill,
It
it was like
hurts.
it was like the hand of God was pushing on my chest. And it's weird
Right.
because I'm used to, like, at an Evo that's making 1,000 horsepower. You're hearing tires screeching, engine
Yep.
noises, blow off valves. This thing was just like, it was like being on a roller coaster with not as much wind.
Right.
It was like This is wild.
Crazy. Yeah, it's totally crazy. And so, for me, I've got plenty of fast volts or V8s. I got four bangers. I got a V12. I've got stuff that I can play around with. But this one was different, and I didn't want to be the last hot rod shop to mess around with EV. So I worked with Hypercraft and put together this car, and it's bad to the bone. I ran it last year at down in Chandler at the Radford Racing School with Pat and Linda, and we were doing test and tune. And as fast as I wanted to go around around the corners and through the apexes, that car was handling. It's all C7 suspension, and got done with it, and I got out and I'm shaking a little bit. And Jake, that was in the passenger seat with his laptop doing perimeter changes, he says, "What do you think?" I said, "As fast as I ever wanted to go." I said, "It's just incredible." He goes, "I got some news for you." I said, "What's that?" He says, "I only ran you up to 38%.
Then
I'm
you're
like, "Cool. So this is what I'm going to get buried in, huh?"
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, well, let's just keep that between ourselves under our hats, and we'll just, for our own personal safety, just tell
Yep.
me that was 100%.
Well,
Now, Jeff
hang
Hope.
on. Wow, hang on one second. This is so interesting. This neighborhood, hang on one second.
All right, the things that happen in the spare
Oh, they're
parts show.
chasing him. Oh,
You never quite know what'll happen on the spare parts show, which makes it fun. I have a theory on what might have just happened, but we'll wait for Dave to report back.
kicking his ass.
Drew, get back inside.
Uh-oh.
Get back in.
Okay, sorry about that. We're back. Super
Was,
interesting.
Right in the fucking.
Was-
Hey, I'm on the get up here, guys. Sorry, I'm
was it,
doing my thing here.
I'm guessing it was an episode of Cops being filmed.
Exactly what it was. And the dude come running through, and I'm like, oh my God, he's in my parking lot, and the cops got guns out on him and tasers and all sorts of stuff. He's in my parking lot getting jacked.
You know,
Kick him again. Oh, sorry.
yeah. You just go out there, scream World Star or something, yeah, ride the lightning.
Yeah, we'll just have to probably cancel that part out.
Oh no, we'll let that ride because that was
Wars
hilarious.
are over.
Yeah. Now, if things would have taken a dark turn, then we'd have been like, we'll be right back.
Anyway, sorry about that.
Anyway, so that's a
Back to
first.
normal.
So Jeff Heltzer actually has an interesting question along those lines. He says, you build a lot of cars for many customers. What is on your hit list of builds that you just want to do for yourself? So something you haven't done yet that you're like, you know what, I need to do that.
You know what? I'm kind of a geek. So I grew up, I'm 53 years old, and I always loved Lamborghini Countachs. And so I wanted to get one of those, but the original engines are not super awesome. They're very problematic as far as taking care of them. And, you can't really drive them a lot. And I'm probably going to get proved wrong. Somebody's, well, no, as long as you drive it, they're fine. I would love to get one of those, actually an original, not a fiberglass one. And I'd like to actually do a resto mod. I'd like to drop an LS in it, do a transaxle, hopefully a transaxle, sequential transaxle would be awesome. And to be able to actually drive the car and enjoy it.
You seen the car that the guys from ICT built? They took a newer Lamborghini and LS swapped it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like a brand new one. There's been a couple people that have done that. There's a couple have done like wide body kits and or there's even one that was it was at SEMA this year, the diesel swapped one. There's a diesel swapped Lambo.
Oh, really?
It was in the Hot Shot Secrets booth. Yeah, if you can go find that online. Yeah, they did a diesel swapped Lamborghini. I'm like, that is just you want to watch an exotic car fan's blood boil. Show them that car. Like,
they'd be like, why did you do that? But you know what? There's a butt for every seat. That's what I always say.
Oh, like I am here for people that do weird swaps to cars. Like I don't know what it is. I love seeing stuff that makes me stop and go, oh, well, that's different.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Putting a V12 in a 53 Corvette, putting a rotary engine in a 69 Camaro. That's cool.
There's the dude at Autorama that took and he built the car in his house. He put that Viper engine in an old 37 Ford and it used the Viper independent front rear suspension. I was like, dude, that's original. And you made this look like it belonged in there.
Right. Well, and if you stylize it too, that's always also the cool part, get it, make everything roll with the theme.
Now, this is another cool one. Thomas Ditter and Scott Slagle kind of had a similar question about, doing builds that you could do with today's modern technology that, maybe you could redo a build, or, is there something out there that, you would want to build that, is like the technology really isn't there yet? What's your view on using on tech and builds?
Well, I mean, we've got one of the nicest Sparrow 3D scanners that has ever been built. In fact, I think I was about 2 weeks before NASA got their exact same one. So I think I'm pretty lucky that way with that sponsor. The Stratasys MC450 3D printer we use that pretty much every single day. We make a lot of actual functional parts as well as plugs. We've got a Cam Master 5 foot by 10 foot 3-axis CNC router table. That thing's always being used. So the technology is here. What I'm really wanting to do more so is start creating ways to create molds and to be able to do quick molds. Like for instance, I want to build new doors for the gull wing that we built a while back and make them out of carbon fiber so they're a little bit lighter. And that's what I'm actually working on. So scanning that information and then being able to basically build a one-time use. Basically, it's a signboard material. It's a very dense foam, and be able to lay up and tape off and vacuum form some door panels and for the gull wing. So there's a lot of different technologies and stuff that we're already using. I mean, I'm waiting for the next thing where it's just a bigger magic microwave, kind of plug my stuff in and hit send, and it just starts spitting out parts.
Or you're able to 3D print stuff with like high quality metals a little bit easier. I think that's going to be the next, like, you talk about being able to go back and redo something or change how you do something, or, maybe not necessarily redo, but use on another build. Like, hey, we did it this way before, but now we have this technology. I mean, that could really open up a lot of wild doors.
Right. So the metal 3D printing, I mean, we don't do much of that stuff, but for my CF1s, for instance, so we have a foundry here in Utah. They do both, they do a whole bunch of different materials, but the material we typically use is aluminum. And they pour my windshield frames, all of the trim for the CF1s, the headlight rings, bumperettes, all of that stuff is done with a 3D printed pattern. And then they basically pound it into the sand, and then they pour the aluminum into that piece, which you've probably seen a couple of times on my TV show. That's super, super helpful because we can basically figure out the size and the shrink of the material once it gets poured. And we're able to actually build those parts and utilize them over and over again. If I was building another car, I can actually take the 3D information that I've already done. Say we're doing a 58 Corvette instead of a 53. There's a little bit different shape on the back tonneau cover. So all I got to do is take that original information and stretch the part that I want to, or move it around, tweak it a little bit, and then utilize it again. The same stuff. So
I play 3D printing too. Like, I got into it mostly from like my scale model car stuff. It's like, I want to build some cool stuff, or, things I didn't have access to. And you talk about opening a door that I was not ready to step through. And you start looking at all the possibilities, the stuff you can make, the 3D scanning. I don't think people understand how far that has come and what it's truly capable of, because I've got a bunch of unopened box kits and I want to be able to go through and scan them, because these are old out of print kits, so I can build future versions in different scales. Well, now with the way the technology is, you could do that with full size cars, where you could scan something, make a print of it, and then it speeds up the manufacturing process and the custom stuff to a new level.
Right. Well, like the 12 Air, the Riddler car, the entire interior for the most part is all 3D printed.
Really?
So it all indexed together. Yeah, Justin had a really, I'm going to say, a simple job, and he's going to hear this and go, nothing simple what I do, but
Yeah.
but yeah, basically he was we basically built everything, and then he did the final fitments and just do a little bit of body work here and there to make it panel matched, and then go through and put the leather on it and make it perfect. I mean, that's basically what he did.
Wow. So that's all, like, what material did you guys use for that?
So the material is 65% nylon, 35% carbon.
Wow. That's
Yep.
that's wild.
Very strong, easy to glue together, easy to make, in our smaller, the 450 is not small, but in comparison to the dash was built in 4 pieces, and then we basically glued it together and pinned it. And it's just, it's very reliable. It doesn't warp around when it gets hot.
And then you cover it in leather, and people like me, like, didn't know the difference.
Nope, and it's a lot faster to do that than it is to sculpt it all out of steel and then body work it and then wrap it. So yeah, the production time on doing 3D printed stuff, once we've scanned the inside of the car, we basically can just go in and design everything where it needs to go and pre-fit it, make sure we've got a way to attach it, and then start wrapping it.
How excited does that make you as a builder to know that you have that big of a toy box now to play with, where you could just dream when you're not sleeping, you could dream something up and there's a distinct possibility you can make it happen.
Yep. Well, you know what it actually did is it basically proved the point that, the CF1 program, for instance, I've sold 30 of those carbon fiber CF1 Corvettes. And basically the next thing, that's a gateway drug for me. I mean, I want to build supercars, I think everybody already kind of knows I've got a couple of Ferraris and I love driving them. I'm very much a fan of that. I'm very much a driver in the sense that I like to take it out on runs. I like to take it out to the track. And to have the love for supercars, long, low, wide, like long sweeps, and just beautiful design. That's kind of the next thing for me. I want to really build some over the top supercars.
And that's the thing with that technology, is that if you can get the right materials and the right size printer, you could legit 3D print an entire like Kevlar carbon fiber chassis that weighs a couple pounds but is just as strong as steel.
Yep. Yep. Oh, the technology is crazy. The materials, and there's so many cool things that are out there right now to be able to play around with. And with Stratasys, they're a great partner for us. If it's a part that's too big to put in our printer, basically we send a simple email and it just gets put right into the shuffle. And they got a much bigger machine back in Minnesota that'll print out the part and then you send it to us. So
It's the advantage of having friends with big printers. Like I
friends with big machines, yeah.
I have a decent sized printer where I print stuff for people, but then I've got friends that have like the really, really big printers where like they could do like almost an entire dash where I don't have to cut it up. Like those are the kind of friends you need to have. You're just like, hey, I've got a file. Isn't it crazy now you could send someone a G code file and then magically
unbelievable.
A week later, it's like, I've got a part.
Right. Well, like the windshield on 12 Air, if you looked at it really close, the body has a almost like a Viper coupe, a roof line that has like the little speed bumps over the top of the passenger and driver's head. Well, that same speed bump design goes into the trim and also into the front and rear windows. The front and rear windows were built by Shields. They basically they're out of polycarbonate, and then they have a silica overlay inside and out. What's really cool about that is that's just an email. I didn't make a buck. I didn't do any of that kind of stuff. I literally designed it, CAD designed. Greg did that for us here, one of my guys. And we just simply send it as an email. They come up with the pattern and basically, boom, I got the part. It's just crazy. So wow. The technology is awesome. We don't even need, to build a buck anymore and send it somewhere. We literally just design it up, give them an oversize, and they build it for us.
Well, Dave, we're starting to wind things down, and I always like to ask my guests a fun question. On the spare parts show, we have access to a time machine, unlimited bank accounts, all kinds of fun stuff. So here's the scenario for you, Dave. You have been put in charge of putting together a build team to build a car for a show. One of those kind of your typical time-laced deals. You don't know what it's going to be. You can use anybody throughout time and history, but it can't be anybody from your current shop. You got to go full Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, get in the phone booth and go find people. Who are 4 builders that are you going to bring on the show with you to build a car?
Oh, Troy Trepanier, Jesse Greening, Chip Foose, and Gandhi. I don't know why I said Gandhi. I don't think you really need the 4th person, but we'll.
it's to fill the spot.
The 4th spot. You know what? Just for humor, I'm going to say George Barris. And for no other reason other than he was a charming guy. He was a sweet talker to my wife back when he was still alive. And he built the Batmobile. He's pretty cool. So he's definitely a staple in our industry, and I just love to have him around. Maybe he could grab us sandwiches and help cut something. Who knows?
And the cool thing about the old school guys is that they look at stuff just a little bit different, and they might just come up with like that outside the box idea, or just something that, puts you over the top.
Right.
That
Totally.
that I would subscribe to Peacock Network to watch that build, because like you said, just with George, the one-liners that would flow would just
Bazoom, bang, pow.
be amazing.
His
Now,
right hand man, Tony Wood, was actually a very good friend of mine. And after George had passed away, I got a package from Tony, and it was his baseball cap that had been so old. It was a red cap, and it turned almost into felt. And the bill was so old and it got crusty and broke that it was like a bunch of chips in a bag. It was crazy, but it had every one of his hat pins, including his Ferrari hat pin, because it was a Ferrari hat. It had all of the really cool pins, and it's one of my very, very favorite possessions that I've gotten from people. So
that's an awesome that's an awesome piece to have. That's one of those things when you hit a certain level, when you can say you have something that no one else has. When
right.
you get those corporate icebreakers. What is something you have that no one else has? You just lay that out there. People are like, "Well, I don't want to go."
I'll show you something that a lot of people don't have. Hang on one second.
Oh, this could be it. I don't know whether to be excited or terrified. A Riddler. Oh, yeah.
And this thing weighs 80 pounds. I don't know how the hell you did.
I was gonna say
I just thought it was cool. I just realized it was sitting right there. I was like, oh,
yeah. Now, before we wrap things up, Dave, I always like to give my guests their opportunity to plug what they got going on. So, tell us where they can find out more, what you got going on, what you got coming up, and all that fun stuff.
oh, that's real easy. We got a fun summer. We got some good travels. We're going to be in Syracuse, New York, one big one that we've never been to. We're going to do the Good Guys in the Heartland over the 4th of July weekend, and that's in Iowa. Got the CF1 program is pretty cool. We're getting ready to sell more of those, and we're going to introduce 2 more body styles, which you'll have to just stay tuned. I don't want to let too many cats out of the bag. Got some great cars for season 11, and also there's 8 episodes of the Riddler build that'll come out this fall, part of our season.
Awesome stuff, folks. Make sure you check all that out. And if you get it, like, I will say this, like, Dave didn't know me from anybody. I just, hey man, what's up at Autorama? He turned around and talked to me like just any other car guy, which if you've been around, there's some people that you meet and it's like disappointing. Dave is not one of those people. You meet Dave in person, and just watching him, how he interacted with everybody, is what makes his hobby awesome. So keep on keeping on with that, man. It's definitely an awesome thing to do.
Thank you. Thank you. And of course, you can always check out more stuff on kindigit.com. That's kindigit.com. Got swag on there. The photo gallery is cool. And yeah, just check it out.
Awesome, Dave. Thanks so much for being on the show, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Brian. Thank you.